Hi, it's John again, continuing with the Manitoba bus crash of June 15, 2023. Well, in the last video, toward the end of it, I mentioned that we had come up to coincidence, or so-called coincidence, number 6, okay? And I explained what that was. So, for the Manitoba bus crash of June 15, 2023, there are at that point I detailed 6 so-called coincidences surrounding that crash. 6. That is more than any other individual crash, okay, in this series of videos, or individual crash that relates to another crash, okay? So already 6. And I had to end it there because I was at the 15-minute limit mark, a few seconds over, as you would notice on the previous video, as you'll notice on the previous video if you haven't already. So we were up to coincidence number 6, and now there is 2 more. This is the same page, the same screenshot that I ended the last video with. Okay, it's just blown up a little more to make it easier to see. So it's expanded a little bit, but it's the exact same page. So for coincidence number 7, well, I'm going to tell you what I said before, that sometimes when you know who does hacks, whether it's for the cell tower hacks or whether it's crashes, hacks and crashes of vehicles, usually it's pretty direct especially in terms of numbers, right? But sometimes I notice, especially the last year or so, the last 10 months or so, maybe give or take a few months, I've noticed that even though he still often uses, direct signs, like the exact number, that he's, trying to give me a sign with, right? Or so it seems that, that's indeed what he's trying to do. And again, this might be done consciously by him or subconsciously. Either way, the signs or so-called coincidences are too many for me to believe they're just coincidences, as I've mentioned many times before. Anyway, so usually when, in terms of the significant numbers, it'll be the exact number, okay? Like, for example, with this one of the exact numbers was a 5, right? A number of significance, right? Another exact number, 670 kilometers. Again, zeros don't count to numerology enthusiasts, so 67. So again, I explained, he was born in 67, and I explained that before, right? So again, these are exact numbers, right? So, that's usually how he still does it. However, sometimes he, like I said, in the last 10 months or the last year or so, I notice that sometimes he'll be off by a number, just one digit, right? Well, now I think or at least for this crash, I think he took that same line of thinking to not be exact, but to be off just by 1. I think he took that same line of thinking in terms of words, because also remember, sometimes it's not numbers of significance, but it's words of significance that come up in a number of these crashes that I cover in this series. Okay. So, for example, with the MAX jet crashes, right, of 2018 and 2019, right, again, the word MAX, was there, right, and I explained the significance of that in part 1 or part 2 of this series, right. Well, so words, can be significant and are sometimes, with these, various crashes, right, that I cover in this series, right. But now it seems that he at least sometimes is off by 1 letter on the words of significance, just like he is sometimes on the numbers of significance, off by 1 digit, right? So what I'm looking at here is the word Firth, okay? Right there. Okay, the crash occurred on Firth Lake Forest Road, near Hambone Road. Well, Firth, if you change just one letter of the word Firth, you get the word fifth. Right? You change the R, the third letter of the word Firth, you change that R to an F, and you get fifth. Well, fifth is the same as 5, so again, that would give us a 5. All right? So by being just off by one letter, which again I believe he did intentionally, we get the word fifth. So it's another 5, another significant number, or in this case, word. So that takes us up to coincidence, or so-called coincidence number 7 for this particular crash, okay? For the Manitoba bus crash. Because even though this was not the Manitoba bus crash, this one here, was another bus crash in BC. Well, the point is it happened less than 24 hours after the Manitoba bus crash. That's what makes it suspicious. And it happened in BC, his province of long residence, or he lived there for a long time. He probably still does. And then so it relates to the Manitoba bus crash, and then also because it's a bus crash, also that also connects it, right? So again, that's that makes it like another coincidence of whether or not I named that one before. Obviously, that if it wasn't a bus crash, it wouldn't stand out, right? So then again, the Firth becoming a fifth just by one letter. So that makes it like what, coincidence number 7, and then number 8 would be Hambone. Actually, you know what? I missed one. It's so obvious that I missed it. Just the fact that I mentioned before about the 670-kilometer aspect, right? I mentioned that as being a so-called coincidence, but just the fact that this happened in less than 24 hours, and that it was a bus crash, and that it was in BC. So those are also count as a separate coincidences. So I don't know if that takes us up to 9 or 10, somewhere around there. Excuse me. Anyway, those are so obvious. Sometimes the obvious ones, it's almost like I subconsciously assume everyone's noticing it without me even having to say it, because it's so obvious, but I should say it anyway, so I just said it now. Anyway, so the last coincidence for the Manitoba bus crash, because it ties to this one, right? Just the fact that because this one happened 24 hours, after, blah blah blah. I explained why the two are tied together, right? Why I see them as tied together, and when they're tied together, then the last coincidence for it is the just like Firth became a fifth. Well, with Hambone, it's also a significant word. Okay, it's significant because the first 3 letters, HAM. Okay, so I just said before, sometimes he's off by one letter, and this one here is off by a lot more than one letter in terms of if you think about where we grew up, where we spent most of our childhood. I explained that in some of my previous videos, right? Okay. It's also explained on my nonprofit website, which, by the way, if you haven't figured it out already from other videos, you can read that information about the name of my nonprofit website below in the description written below this video. You will see that information if you haven't seen it already in other videos. Okay? So there, as well as in some of my previous videos, I mentioned the city in which we spent most of our childhood, and so then you know why the first 3 letters of that word are significant. Okay, because even though the rest, aren't, it doesn't matter because he's done it previously before, or at least it seems he's done it previously before on a few other ones where he would choose just the first three letters. For example, the New Hampshire plane crashes, Hampshire, okay, New Hampshire, right? So the same three letters, H-A-M, all right? I explained the significance of those letters then, and I'm explaining it now again. I'm saying it now again. The same three letters, H-A-M, because it's the same three letters that make up the beginning of the city in which we grew up in, or in which we spent most of our childhood in, okay? So, basically, just like it came up, just like I explained it, and noticed that so-called coincidence in the New Hampshire plane crashes, so here too, I can't help but notice the same three letters, ham, H-A-M, coming up yet again. So that makes it like what, coincidence number 11, 10 or 11 for the Manitoba bus crash? Because again, even though this was another bus crash, it tied to it, so all the coincidences from that one and this one all relate. I mean, from the Manitoba one and this one, because it's connected to the Manitoba one, all the coincidences therefore become part of the Manitoba bus crash coincidences because these relate to that one, okay? So again, at least 10 or 11 so-called coincidences surrounding the Manitoba bus crash. By far the most that I've come across on any of these suspicious crashes that I cover, and other ones that I have notes for that I'm going to hopefully get to in the future. Again, I could drop dead at any time, as I've mentioned before, from various causes, none of them natural, by the way. And so, if that happens, then obviously, I won't be able to cover everything that I want to cover. But if that doesn't happen, then, I plan to do a lot more videos. I have a lot more notes on old crashes from previous years and just more recent ones from previous weeks and even days. Because I just mentioned New Hampshire. Well, in the previous, in the last week or so, again, this is early February 2024. In the last week or so, so either early February or late January, there has been at least one more suspicious plane crash again in New Hampshire. Okay, so I'd like to get to that one. I have some screenshots already. I'd like to do more research on it. I'd like to put out a video on that one, too. But again, there's been other aircraft also, and surface vehicle crashes recently also that deserve my attention. And so I don't know which one I'm gonna get to like next or in the near future. But there's just so many. Anyway. That's all I can see for the so-called coincidences regarding the Manitoba bus crash. When I say that's all, I mean that's kind of a ridiculous thing to say, considering there are so many. Like I said, at least 10 or 11. But beyond that, I want to do at least one or two more videos on the Manitoba bus crash. It may not necessarily be the next video, but it'll be soon, or at least I plan for it to be soon. Again, if I'm alive and conscious. Anyway. Even though that's it for the so-called coincidences for it, I want to mention, though, that there's a number of points that I've noticed that deserve highlighting besides so-called coincidences for that crash, and that I want to cover. And that's going to take at least one more video. And the main one I'll tell you right now is the fact that the bus driver who drove that bus in Manitoba that was in that crash of the transport truck. Again, he did not have the right of way, okay? And he went into the intersection. There's dash cam from the truck that shows he did not have the right of way. The truck had the right of way. Anyway, the point is the bus driver survived, yet all these months later, 6, 7 months later, the RCMP has still not interviewed him, according to some information I found online recently. And I have screenshots of that. I'm going to do more, and I'm going to get more into that soon. That's it for now. Thanks. Bye.